A lot of miles have passed since we last talked. Let me fill you in on what's been going on. So, I was in the middle of a reset last time we talked, and I had, what was it? It was, I was outside of Paris, California, in Thousand Palms, California, when I did that shutdown. And the following day, I got up early, drove to Paris, and I got there early. And I got in line, just like I did when I was dropping off the pods. And there was one guy whose truck was dark. He was parked in the front. There was another truck behind him. And so I looped around and came back the other direction and got in line. I went ahead and this time I did not pull out my straps or anything, because I looked at it and said, if I pull out my straps and put them on the back of the truck, I mean, what if they didn't have a pod ready or something like that? This location at Paris does not allow you to strap up there in their parking lot anyway. You have to go outside of their gates to strap up. So either way, I could strap up. I would have to strap up outside. So I figured, why pull them out early? So I got there early, and then I just shut down and jumped off the clock for a little bit. The guy that was directly across from me, who was the first truck in line, was so slow. He was a Warner truck. He had a dog. Nice enough guy. I ended up talking to him, but he was so slow. He was carrying some pods. They opened up the gate. He pulls in, stops where they tell you to, which is before you pull into the lot, and he just waits. He gets out, he breaks all the straps, and then he just sits there. And I'm like, come on, pull into the lot. But technically, they want you to wait there until they tell you to move in. And I went ahead and got in the line. Went inside and signed in on the paperwork and that kind of thing. Went back out to the truck. All the while thinking that the guy in front of me was probably going to complain and say, why'd you go ahead and sign in before me? But, either way, he was first in line. They knew that. So they told him when we finally got in there. I was talking to him a little bit about state of pods and, driving across America, doing OTR and that kind of stuff. And seemed like a nice enough guy despite being extremely slow. But we got in the little spots there from to load us up, and they did not have one of his containers ready, so he had to wait there for a bit. So they went ahead and loaded me. I pulled outside and started throwing the straps and getting those ready. Now, I wanted to try to get out of California as quick as possible. I don't like driving in that state, and unfortunately, it's a reality. You got to do it. So, I think it was probably about almost 7:30 by the time I got out of California, by the time I got out of Paris. And that was mainly because they let us in at 6:15. They didn't start to allow trucks into their lot until almost 7. And by the time they loaded me up, it was about 7:10. I pulled outside, threw the straps, got out of there. It was 2 16-footers, 2 8-footers, so 10 straps. I threw them all. I was out of there by 7:30. And then I had to go, 205? No. I don't remember. But then I had to jump on California 60 going north. I think it might have been 205, 215, something like that. That's the interstate. And so you get on that, and then you get on California 60 and you go up to Interstate 10. And then you start going east. So I got out of California mid-morning, but not before I got another roll stability critical event. Now, this one was interesting because it's on a straightaway where there's really nothing going on. So you would say, if you looked from a satellite view, what is the deal? Why would you get a roll stability? Well, it's because they had a chicane in the road, which is a left and then a right, or a right and then a left. That's a chicane. So it ended up, basically they're doing some road construction there. So it was a chicane over to the left, and then I'm riding in the, they basically take the other side of the interstate, the 2 lanes there. They split it with a barrier down the middle, and then it's 2-way traffic basically on 1 lane. That's what they do. And then they positioned us and they move us back into our side. And at that point, I got the roll stability. And the reason why, even though I slowed down, moved back over, but right as I started to move back to the left and turn back to the left, because they're doing road construction and because they're doing repavement, there was uneven pavement there, and it drops down like 2 inches. So as soon as I start to go back to the left, it drops down. The truck senses that I'm doing a left-hand turn, and the right-hand side suddenly dips, and it says, "Whoa, you must be starting to topple," and it does a roll stability, critical event, which means that for the next few days, I'm getting notifications saying, "Hey, call us so we can discuss this almost rolling the truck thing." Anyway, I looked at that. The second it happened and it said roll stability, I said, of course, I'm going to hear about this for the next few days. But, you know, it is what it is. And I'll talk about the discussion I had with the guy later about that. Anyway, I continued on out of California and headed towards Phoenix, because this was taking me back to Atlanta, which was about 2,200 miles. I knew that in order for me to have a fighting chance of getting back Monday, remember that if you are assigned a job from Schneider from Sunday until Saturday, if you finish that job before technically early Tuesday morning, then you get paid for it that Thursday. So by Monday or Tuesday early morning, you will get paid 2 days later on that Thursday. So I really wanted that, because as of the time of this recording, if I could drop that off on Monday, that would be a week before Christmas to the day. So that would mean that I would have that money in the account before Christmas. That sounds pretty appealing. So I just had to get that thing done. Okay, so I knew that in order for me to do about 625 to 650 miles a day for 2 days in a row, that would be about 1,300 miles roughly. And then I could probably do about 400 to 500 the last day, getting me to Atlanta. So that would take me up to about 1,700 to 1,800 miles. Being that this was 2,200, I got to get about 400 miles down this first day. The good thing about driving in the Midwest and the middle part of America is that the truck stops don't fill up as early as they do on the East Coast or going up and down the West Coast. In those areas, it will fill up. The parking lot will become full sometimes in the 1 o'clock hour. By 1 o'clock, by 2 o'clock, the parking lot's full. Even if they have 150 spaces, sometimes they will be full. So you have to understand, you have to know your parking lots and that kind of stuff. Trucker Path, the app, is extremely helpful in finding parking. Even the free app is very, very good, because it will show you all the parking locations that you can potentially park in, even the rest areas on the side of the road and stuff like that. Keep in mind, because it's free, it's a good idea to be helpful. So whenever you end up someplace, if you bring up the app and you stop there, it will ask you to update that location. And so you can just hit the GPS. It will say, hey, it looks like you're at a truck stop, and you just click on update, and you can choose one of 4 things. You can choose many spots available, some spots available, full, or paid spots only. And I highly recommend that if you're using a free app, participate. Do your part. That helps out other truckers. It also helps out the app. And since you're using it for free, it's a good idea to do that, because it helps to keep it free and it helps to keep it worthwhile, which of course means that more people will be drawn to it, and it will hopefully help to remain free. Trucker Path is a very good app. Okay, so I was approaching Phoenix and eyeing things. I knew that I had to get about 400 miles down that first day, roughly. And as I was approaching Phoenix, I saw one of those overhead signs, because I knew I was going to have to go down Phoenix and then head down south, because the place I'd worked out was going to be about 380 miles away from Paris, and it was in a place called Eloy, Arizona. There's two truck stops over there, a Pilot and a Flying J on either side of the interstate. And I knew that one of them had like 250 parking spots, the other one has like 150, if memory serves. I might be off on that. But I looked at it and said, that's going to be a good place to stop, because even if I'm delayed, I have a fighting chance of finding a parking spot there, even if I pull in there at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. As I was approaching Phoenix, I saw one of those overhead signs that said that if you go through Phoenix and then head down towards Tucson, was it? Tucson, yeah. If you head down south towards Tucson, Tucson was going to be an hour and 153 minutes, I think it said, if you go from that place where we were, was right there, to Tucson through Phoenix. But if I were to go 1 or 2 more miles to the next exit and then cut down on this like a cut-through road down to Interstate 8, then I go over to Tucson. From there, it was going to be 120 some odd minutes instead. And I looked at that and I said, if that's what it takes to get to Tucson, and I remember looking at that path and saying, do I want to do that? Because the cut down, because Interstate 10 does this, Interstate 8 does this, and they kind of go in like this, get close, and then they separate out, and then and then 10 goes down and catches up with 8. But in order for me to cut down, is that a good place? Is it better for me to cut down here and then go over, or is it better for me to go over and then down? I was looking at it mileage wise, and it was kind of a crapshoot. It was kind of like, well, you might be better on the interstate, you might be better on the back road. I decided I was going to play it by ear. And I was thinking about going through Phoenix because everything seemed like it was smooth sailing. You know, you can't just stop on the side of the road and look at traffic. I mean, you can technically, but no chatter was on the CB radios, and I can't access my apps that tell me about traffic and stuff while I'm driving. So what I decided to do is, when I saw that pop up there and said basically I could save 30 minutes on my way to Tucson, even though I wasn't going quite as far as Tucson, if I were to take that little exit and cut down. I remembered the exit, not the exit number, but I remember the interstate number because I had been looking at it the night before. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and take this down there. It was a little slow for the first 4 miles. It was, I think, dropped down to like 45 miles an hour. But then after that, it went back up to 65, and it was smooth sailing all the way down to Interstate 8. I mean, the last, I think, 3 miles going to Interstate 8, it got down close, and then it said make a left turn at the traffic light, and then go down like 2.8 miles or whatever it was, and then jump on Interstate 8. But still, it's not going to lose me 30 minutes of traffic. So I went ahead and did that, and it took me onto the interstate that I was going to be going on, Interstate 10, again. And then it put me right there going down to Eloy, Arizona. That ended up being a very cool little thing, because that truck stop, I think I arrived there at like, it was early to mid-afternoon. It was like 2:30, something like that. Keeping in mind that as soon as you leave California, you technically drop down a time. You lose an hour, basically, going from Pacific to Mountain. And so that was in Mountain time. And so I think it might have been 3 something by the time I got there. But I had no problem finding a parking spot. I went inside. One thing that's interesting about Arizona is you can get what they call as car access kits. They're like $30. It includes a Slim Jim, a wide and a narrow one that you can use to slide down to the window to pull the lock mechanism, and it has different other things to help you access a car and enter a car. I haven't seen that in any other state. Interesting that they have that in Arizona. So it must be legal in Arizona, but not legal in other states. Or maybe it's legal to sell in Arizona, but they're still legal in other states. I'm not 100% sure. Don't know the legality of that. But I thought it was kind of interesting because I saw that when I was headed into California. When I'd stopped in Avondale, Arizona, when I was headed to Paris. That's where I stopped for the night. And I had seen it in that Pilot or Flying J, and then I was like, I wonder if it's in this one too, because if it is, then it must be an Arizona thing. If not, it was just a thing that you're going to run into in Phoenix, but ended up being in that one too. Maybe it's just because it was slightly south of Phoenix. I don't know. Anyway, I thought it was kind of interesting. Arizona is not a Commonwealth state, so it's not like every single county would have different laws. Anyway, took a shower, got up the next morning, and I knew the next day I was going to have to get from Eloy, Arizona to Odessa, Texas. Now that was taking me across I-10 again, and it was gonna, now Here's the interesting thing. My navigation, that new global GPS program app GPS thing. If I put in and say navigate me to Atlanta, it routed me on I-10, then I-20 straight to Atlanta. My fuel assignments that it gave me were taking me up through Moriarty, New Mexico, and one in Oklahoma City. And I looked at that and I said, that is nowhere near on the path that you're having me take. And I don't want to go up there because even though the temperature was rising and the weather advisory wasn't going to be nearly as bad, it was supposed to be raining a little bit. Temperature was going to be dropping a little bit. I wasn't that concerned about it, but I would rather go the southern route. But when I came to that first stop, it was going to want me to continue north. It was going to want me to continue to my fuel assignment. Now remember, these fuel assignments are non-negotiable. They are absolute. I had sent an email the previous week or the week before that to the DTL saying that Fuel Solutions, I don't know if there was a change in them, but they got a little bit goofy for a bit. Because when I got to Salina, Kansas, it said, leaving East St. Louis, Missouri, 400 miles later, Salina, Kansas, stop for a fuel assignment there too. So fill up in East St. Louis, Missouri, and then fill up in Salina, Kansas. I filled up and then on a full tank went to sleep that night. The next morning I got up, left, got 20 miles down the road nearly, and then it popped up and said, Fuel Solution, Salina, Kansas. I'm like, I just had that fuel solution. I've only filled up 20 miles ago. What is that, like a 2.5 gallons of diesel? And I was like, I don't think it wants me to go back the opposite direction just to fill up, just to turn around and go back. That seems really stupid to me. There was another really weird fuel solution it gave me too, and that was when I got to Fernley, Nevada. I think I told you about this too. It gave me a fuel solution to fill up in Fernley, Nevada at the exit I was at. I was going to go ahead and stop it for the night. So I fueled up and then I stopped for the night. The next morning I got up and it gave me a fuel solution to the other Fernley, Nevada Pilot or Flying J, which was 2 miles down the road. And I'm like, I just filled up. It's like, I mean, I would be filling up less than half a tank of fuel by the time I got there. Kind of ridiculous. So I said, I contacted the DTLs. I told them I'm not doing these fuel assignments. Those 2 fuel assignments are stupid. I don't know if they just changed the algorithm or the program or whatever, but it's stupid. Hopefully they fixed it by the time you're watching this. Got another very weird fuel solution though, and that was that when I went to sleep that night in Eloy, Arizona, you can hit the update fuel level button on workflow, and what that does is it checks things on your truck, and it communicates and says, okay, this is how much fuel it has, and this is where it would be a good fuel solution. And it may remove a fuel assignment, it may add a fuel assignment, it may remove and then add a fuel assignment. And when I stopped at Eloy, Arizona, I hit the button hoping that it was going to tell me, remove the Moriarty, New Mexico fuel assignment. It didn't. And for whatever dumb reason, when I hit the road, I drove from, and this is like at, whatever early time in the morning it was. It's like 1 a.m., 2 a.m. my time. I left. I got through Tucson. I got through Arizona. I got into New Mexico. And every single time Global Nav crashes, it puts you, any of the work assignments that you have not marked as complete yet, it takes the next work assignment and the global navigation program, which crashes probably 5 times a day, 3 to 5 times a day minimum. It will automatically say, oh, as soon as you open it back up, it says you must be going to your next place on your dispatch list, and it routes you there. It doesn't matter if I know I'm not going to make it all the way to Atlanta, 2,200 miles in one day. I have already put in the address of the truck stop I want to stop in for the night. It doesn't care. It goes ahead and updates it and says, oh, you're going to your fuel assignment. Well, that fuel assignment was taking me across, as soon as I got to New Mexico, it was basically telling me when I got to, where was that in New Mexico? It's that place at the very south of New Mexico. South of Albuquerque. Forgot the city now. But It wasn't Santa Fe. Santa Fe is northeast. But anyway, whatever the town was that I was in, it was routing me and telling me to jump on the interstate going straight on 25 north, 220 miles out of my way to get to the fuel assignment, and then turn east onto 40 to go to Moriarty for the fuel assignment. And I looked at that and I said, you are so stupid. It should have updated overnight since I hit the update fuel assignment, fuel button. So I went ahead and ignored it and continued on I-10. I got to El Paso, and El Paso is right there at the border. There's you look to the right and there's Mexico at one point. There ended up being collision out there, and that somebody on the CB radio said that there was 2 fatalities. There was two people dead. There was one person they said was in the driver's side vehicle, and they had crashed, and they weren't moving, and the police weren't moving, and they were waiting for EMS, but the person wasn't moving. And finally they moved them, and they moved the cars and stuff, and it was cleared up in maybe 25-30 minutes, and we were on the road. It's amazing how quick they got that going. Then, as we were going down 10, headed farther into Texas, there was an exit where you had to go through a checkpoint. CMVs were able to take the right-hand lane. All other vehicles took the left-hand lane for inspections, and it was a lot slower. The CMV line actually went very quickly. Kind of surprising. I don't know if they scanned the vehicles or not, or just look to see if there's anything awkward or whatever. But what I will say is it's very odd to me when you look at it and when you're going through the line, and they just kind of just wave you on through, just continuously wave you, just come on through, and you just go through it very, very slow. And the person, when I went through there, I was looking at him or her, and it ended up being a her, who she was doing this number while looking back this direction, wasn't even paying attention to me or looking at anything. I don't know if there was anything back over her shoulder to the right, but it's like, you didn't, it said have your immigration papers ready or whatever, and it's like, maybe CMVs, they're not expecting us to immigrate into America because, they expect it. I don't know. Maybe they check you at the border if you're in a CMV and it's different. I don't know. I've never traveled over the border in a CMV. Pretty smooth sailing. It only slowed me down for, a few minutes. Then it continued on the road. I stopped that night in Odessa, Texas. Odessa, Texas. Another truck stop that wasn't that bad. It was not one of the bigger truck stops, but they were pretty full. They only had like 3 or 4 parking spaces left in the main area near the truck stop. But then there was this other like little drive-through area where there was more parking spots. But I found one that was right at the end of the pull-in for the fuel island. Went ahead and shut down for the night, had another shower. Next morning, I got up even earlier because every single time it gives you 10 hours. So if I finish at 4, I'm going to start at 2. If I finish at 2, I'm going to start at 12. If I finish at 1, I'm going to start at 11. So, and that's when you can log in. So whatever time you log out, 10 hours later, I'll be logging back in. So that's what I did. Next morning, I got up early. And especially when you're going back east, you really need to do that. Otherwise, you're going to start losing your hours. Because like if I start at noon and or if I start at midnight and I finish at noon, and then I've traveled over a time and I lose an hour, then it's actually 1 p.m. So if I don't start that next day, back at 11 again, I could lose an hour and be at noon again. So you got to stay on top of your hours. So by that point, I had dropped down now to Central Time. Next morning, I got up early, headed out of Odessa, Texas, started driving. I got about, I think it was 642 miles that day. And I got all the way to, there was Monroe and there was Rayville, Louisiana. And between that on I-20, at some point that day on my way to Odessa, Texas, I ended up cutting up I-20 and starting right there at I-20. Now, what's interesting is I-20 is the only interstate now I have driven all the way across the entire thing. There may be a small one, like maybe I-30. Actually, no. In I-30, I think the I-30 goes through Dallas. And I've always done routes around Dallas because that's part of the rules. But I think I-20 is the only interstate now I've driven all the way from the source where it connects right there at I-10 all the way out to Florence, South Carolina, where it starts there at that Buc-ee's and Pilot that I was at a couple months ago when I got food poisoning. Right there at Interstate 95. So I've driven all the way across I-20 now in the 2,000 miles or whatever it is. Maybe not quite that much. Kind of cool to be able to do that, though. Say that I've done that. There's probably been other ones that I've gone the entire way on, but I don't know. And those are just the ones that end in 0 or end in 5, so the majors. There's like little Interstate 17 and Interstate 8 and stuff like that. I've probably gone through the entire thing, maybe. Not Interstate 8, because it starts in California, south of Los Angeles. All right, so I was driving, let's see, Odessa, Texas was pretty uneventful, as you can imagine, just going slightly up and down hills. Speed limit was 75. It drops down, a lot of road construction going on in this entire thing. And then from Louisiana, now in the Monroe and Rayville, Louisiana area, there is a lot of Pilots and Flying J's. I don't know why there are so many, but I like it because every 5 to 10 miles there's another Pilot or Flying J, sometimes 2 at the same exit. So I looked at it when I was doing my planning. I said, best case scenario, I'll drive 652 miles. If I can't quite make it that far, then I'll try to see if I can stop at the one that's at 646 miles or 642 miles or whatever it was. And I did not want to plan on going farther than that because past that, it looked like there was going to be a little bit of road construction and the truck stops were going to be a little bit smaller. And I looked at that and said, depending on the time I get there, I would rather have less competition than more. So if I stop at one of the bigger truck stops, I have a better chance of getting a parking spot than if I stop at one of the ones that only has 60. So anyway, I ended up stopping at a truck stop in Rayville, and that was good. Then I hit the road next day. Early again. Now this is going to be taking me back into Atlanta. This is now Monday. So I left Paris, California on Friday, drove Saturday and Sunday, mainly overnight, so I'm not going to run into a whole lot of traffic. And then it was smooth sailing until I got into Alabama. Birmingham, Alabama. Right before I approached 459 to go around Birmingham, there was a traffic accident and everything was going slow. And then I looked over and I think it was US 11 or something like that had a little side road that and I looked at it and it looked like it was red on my since I was stopped on the interstate. I checked my app on the tablet and it looked like it was red, but it was red all the way up to right where I was. And I looked over the bridge and it was smooth. It was nothing was there. So I was like, I'm going to take a gamble on this one. That was a bad gamble. I would have lost a lot of money if I was in Vegas with that kind of luck, those odds. Because as soon as you turn left and you go north on 11, 2 things happened. After about 15 minutes, I'm hearing on the CB radio, all lanes are clear. And I was like, oh, should I turn around? And I look over, and there's a little gas station here on my left with a big enough parking lot that I could have pulled in there and U-turned around and gone on back. It was only 2 miles up the road. But it was going slow. And what they were saying from the CB radio is that it's one of the, they said what they're doing is they're only letting 10 cars through. And then they let the other side go. I was like, you know what? I'm going to stay with this and see what happens. So I sat there in that traffic, and I tell you, it was annoying. And I did not know why it was going so slow until I got up there. It ends up not having people. It's a road construction thing. So they have a little area where they have it dropped down to a single lane. It was a 2-lane road. And they basically dropped it to a single lane, and they let some cars go through and then some cars go back. Well, they don't have it manned. So there is no brain power at all in this thing. It is a little makeshift type light that then connects up to a cable to the other side where there's another traffic light. Well, going south, there's nobody going that way. There's only 2 cars. Every now and then there's 3. because no one is going this way because they can all take the interstate. It's only local traffic and stuff. But when you go the opposite direction, that's when the traffic was completely jammed up on I-20. So that was where everybody was jammed up. And this traffic light does not have the ability to think and rationalize that maybe we should let the cars go a little bit longer on this side than the other side. And the problem is when you shut down two parts of the interstate, two lanes become one, and they stop it like this, and there's only one lane operating, you have to wait until the entire thing passes and clears before they say light turns green. Now these cars pull in and they start to go, and as soon as they're clear, then this light says, okay, now it's time to go green, and it then sends cars through. As soon as the light turns red, cars stop going, and then they have to wait for them to get all the way through before it clears and turns green on the other side again. The problem with that is that it was backed up, and I was listening to the CB radio. It was backed up over 4 miles on the way that I was going, because it was only letting through cars every 10 or so cars at a time. So it was just going slow. Then you creep up. It's slow, stop, slow, stop, slow, stop. And sometimes the light would turn green and no cars would go through, because I was looking at it, and after a while you start kind of thinking about it. It's like, all right, now I should be seeing cars. Where are the cars? There's no cars. And finally, I get to the point where I can see the traffic light up ahead, and I see it turn red. And I'm like, okay, we should see cars coming through. There's no cars going through from the opposite direction. So it basically stops, and because there's no brain on this thing, so the DOT really fails in that realm. And I understand they want to be fair. Oh, it used to be fair. It used to be even, where each side gets 1 minute to pass through, and then the light turns green, and on the other side needs to be fair. It doesn't need to be fair if there's 4 miles of traffic on one side and there's none on the other. That's when you leave it going for something like 5 to 8 minutes on one side, and then you stop it and allow the traffic on the other side to go for a minute or so. I know it doesn't seem fair, but when cars can pull straight up to a light and it goes green and they go on through, that's not fair to the people that have been waiting for over an hour in 4 miles of traffic. So they need to get their act together. Anyway, got through there, take a side road, pull back onto the interstate, bypass Alabama on 459. I think it was 459, 465, maybe. I don't remember what it is. Got through there, and as I'm approaching, it joins back up with I-20, and as I'm approaching the border, there's more traffic. Another traffic accident, or road construction rather, where they stopped. They had 3 lanes at this point, and it says left lane ends and right lane needs to merge into the center lane. People do not know how to merge. They do not know how to do any of this stuff. So what happens? You start driving down the road, and everybody stays in those lanes until they're forced to move over. And by that point, it's a bottleneck. If people would just, if they really wanted to, they could put out a notification a mile in advance and say, start moving into, merge into the center lane, road ends ahead. If they put a sign like that up there, as opposed to saying, road ends in 1,000 feet, or lane ends in 1,000 feet, merge over. By then, everyone's stopped. If you did it a mile, you'd put one of those little, mobile signs out there that says it. I know that these cars and stuff are still going to try to zip through and try to see what they can do. But that would at least inform the trucks, and that would inform everybody else who was smart to start moving into that middle lane. And that way it would slow down, but everyone would stay moving. All right. So anyway, slowed down. Finally got through there. I had a fuel assignment on the other side, because I ignored the fuel assignment that was telling me to go to Moriarty. When I stopped in Odessa, Texas, right before I stopped for the night, I hit the fuel assignment button again, right as I was pulling off on the exit. So that way it would have a chance to do its magic, hopefully. And then, since I was already past that pull off from Moriarty, and I was actually on the east side of it, at 3:30 a.m., whenever it does its thing, it actually updated my fuel assignment and told me to go someplace else, but not before I had to make a stop and get a little bit of fuel. I had only filled up a little bit, like 40 or 50 gallons, because I'd been watching the fuel prices and looked at it and says, okay, well, this is like $4.25, this is $4.15, this is $4.08, and so I was watching the prices, and as soon as I saw a sign that looked like it was the lowest I had seen. I said, okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop there. At least, I'm going to do my part to try to help, since the fuel assignments were broken. The next morning, it gave me a fuel assignment, and so I went ahead and filled up at that point. Well, I filled up at that Alabama location, which is only about 75, 80 miles away from my drop in Atlanta. But one thing occurred to me, being that as of the time of this video, at that particular point, I should say, I was dropping off on Monday. That was the Monday before Christmas, so that was December 18th. And when I was at I had been thinking, when you're stuck in traffic and driving down the road, you have a chance to think. And one thing that occurred to me was, if I drive 2 extra days, then I have to do a reset. Then I get another pre-assignment. And then I have my home time starting on December 23rd. So that's when I have to be home. Are they going to be able to get me home by that Saturday, the 23rd? Is it better for me to reset when I get to Atlanta, have 70 hours and 4 full days to hit it hard, hopefully, and get a lot of good running around done before I get back to Atlanta for the home time? Seemed logical to me. But I had about 24 hours left on my clock by the time I got back to Atlanta and did that drop in Paris. The DTL team, driver team leaders, had said, nope, I don't recommend a reset at this time. And I said, okay, well, I just thought I would have a better chance of staying moving, because the biggest thing that annoys me is when I come to a stop and I offload my pods. Now I have to stop for some place to do a reset. And then it gives me another assignment and I have to go back empty to pick up another load. I really wish I could drop and pick up in the same place at the same time and start heading wherever it is, and then shut down and reset. I know that means losing an entire day on top of your 10-hour clock, but it's not maybe best for the customer. But if you're driving a long haul across America or something like that, they don't mind, because there's like 8 days for you to get there. I was getting there in 4. Even though I was supposed to be there by Wednesday, I got there by Monday. California to Georgia in 4 days. And I had not gotten a pre-assignment. So I texted him, I sent a message back and I said, okay, I just figured that I'd probably have a better chance of getting a good load if I didn't have to stop, if I could have just kept it going. I don't have a pre-assignment as of right now. So I was thinking, since I don't have a pre-assignment, can I go ahead and shut down? And that way I have 4 days to hit it hard. They said they don't recommend that. And I was like, okay, fine. And then I made him aware that I still had not been pre-assigned. I said, okay, I was just thinking that since I didn't have a pre-assignment, it would probably be using our time better. I got to Atlanta, and right as I was pulling in, I checked in with security, and as I was driving, I said, new pre-assignment received. Right as I'm driving to the pod's location, I'm like, okay, cool, what is it? It's like right at just about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Because of all the traffic, I was there a lot later than expected. Originally, I was expecting to be there by 10 a.m. I pushed it back to 11, then I pushed it back to 1. I got there closer to 2. Well, it wasn't picking up at the same pod's location. It was picking up at East Point. When it says take a bring your empty trailer, BMT, when it says bring empty trailer to that location, they pay you for it. So you're dropping off here, and it basically starts your work assignment there, and then it tells you to go here, and it says it's going to be 18 miles. So it pays you for that. No problem. The problem is I had to break 10 straps and get over there. I was able to break the 10 straps. I got them done, and usually they're extremely fast. And this guy there in the Atlanta pods location, he is extremely fast. The second the straps are broken, he whips over there, he pulls that pod off, and he's out of there. This time, as soon as I start to break him, I'm like, yeah, I'll go ahead and pull all these straps. He said, no, take your time. And I'm like, oh no, it's fine. I'll have these broken in a second. He says, yeah, just continue what you're doing. And he goes and starts moving things around, positions them. I break all 10 straps. I put all 10 straps away, and I'm waiting for him. And I'm like, this is the first time I've ever had to wait for this dude. And he comes over after another couple of minutes, and I give him my paperwork, and he He signs it and stuff. I go ahead and submit it in the paperwork and into the tablet and do everything I'm supposed to, and then I'm sitting there, and he starts pulling off the pods, or actually he just sits there. Originally he just sits there, so he gives me the paperwork. I submitted all in the tablet, and I'm waiting, and I'm like, okay, I'm waiting to hit the button that says I'm done with this assignment, and I'm like, pull him. I got to be in East Point, which is 18 miles away or so, but I'm looking at it and saying, I have a fighting chance of getting there before 3 o'clock and picking it up, because I have to pick up in East Point. Then I'm going to Goodlettsville, Tennessee to pick up there, and then I'm going to Tip City, Ohio. If I could get this assignment done in Atlanta, I could be using my time efficiently and get hopefully up to Goodlettsville first thing in the morning. That way I'm a good ways down the way. Well, I estimated that this entire trip was going to take me 14 hours, even though it was only 600 and some odd miles. I was anticipating it was going to take 14 hours because I was hearing that there was snow up and down going up the East Coast, and that there were some snowstorms up north. One of my friends who lives in Kentucky had sent me a message saying we got some snow, and he took a picture of it and said, this is a tradition I have with my mom where I celebrate where we celebrate it's officially the start of Christmas when we see or Christmas time or winter when we see snow, and we see snow, so happy winter, it's here. And I was looking at it saying, okay, well, there's definitely some snow there then, and the things I've been hearing about, some snow in the Northeast, maybe that's something I need to be aware of. So I said, I'm going to give myself a few extra hours here on my drive. And I was waiting for the truck to be offloaded, and finally, after he was just sitting there on his phone, after nearly 5 minutes, I jump out of the truck and I say, hey dude, I have a fighting chance of picking up across town in East Point if you can go ahead and get me offloaded, because at that point it was like 2:05. And so he just nods at me, and I go back and jump in the truck, and I'm looking at him. He's still on his phone. After a couple more minutes, he jumps up and he starts pulling the pods off. The second the last one is done, I'm out of there. I get to East Point by about 2:35, 2:40, because it's mostly interstate. And when I get there, the guy is he's just like, I give him the container number and the trip sheet number. He asked for the container number first, which is very weird. Most of the time people want the trip sheet number. But I gave it to him, and he was fine with it, and he took it, put it in the system. And then some of their single, the vehicles that they have that drop off the pods at people's houses, 2 of those pulled up, and he went ahead and offloaded them first. And then loaded them back up, and they hit the road. Now, there's 2 guys in forklifts at this point. One of those guys did not show up. Finally, another guy pulled in. He loads up my one, gives me the one pod that I need. So at least I got it. And by that point, it was 3 o'clock p.m. So I'll go ahead and throw the strap. And at this point, I'm going to stop in the Schneider OC overnight. I'm like, look, I got my job done in Atlanta. That's all I care about. Hit the interstate, went and shut down for the night at the Schneider Operations Center. And then I went home and saw my family for the first time in 3 weeks, which was nice. They were all like, what do you want for dinner? I'm like, I don't care. What do you want for dinner? I don't care. Anyway, we ended up having Taco Bell for dinner. Next morning, I was up. I was playing with the girls and seeing them and spending time with them until just before 9 o'clock. I had some tea with them, and then I headed to bed about 9:30. Got up at midnight. 2.5 hours of sleep. Now, you may look at that and say, oh, that's not enough. That's going to be dangerous driving down the road. You shouldn't do that. FMCSA and DOT does not want you to drive if you're either sick or if you're tired. Thing is, though, that's like a long nap. I was actually fine at that time. So I was like, you know what? I am not against stopping for a nap or stopping for the day if I need to. I knew I was not going to make it all the way to Tip City the same day, even though I technically could have. If it was smooth sailing, it was like 600 miles, 580, something like that. That's certainly something I could do. Including the stop I had to make in Goodlettsville, I got there at 6 a.m. They were a little slow. in getting things to getting things going, because their manager or something like that had taken the hotspot home that night, so he had to use his phone as a hotspot. And anyway, by the time he got me loaded up and I had thrown the straps and I got out of there on those two pods, it was after 7 a.m. That means technically I had 8 hours to get up to Tip City. From Goodlettsville, Tennessee, it was about, what is it, 400 miles, 390 miles, something like that. Might be less than that, I don't remember. But I looked at that and I said, you know what? I could power on through that, but that means going through Cincinnati sometime in the early afternoon. Cincinnati has usually been a little on the slow side. They have something going on there. So I said, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and stop. I have a friend that lives out in Ratcliffe, Kentucky. I hadn't seen him in a long time. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to get up there. I'm going to shut it down. And then I'm going to wake up early the next morning, drive extra early, and be in Tip City at 6 a.m. It's going to be better. Because I knew that if I had enough hours left, pods may end up sending me out of Tip City to someplace else. But if I ended up working, and I might have been able to pick up something else, but I didn't know what it was going to be and what kind of a job they would actually give me with only like 10 hours left on my clock. Technically, when I left Ratcliffe, Glendale, Kentucky, technically, when I left Glendale and headed up north, it was only like 210 miles, 211 miles up to Tip City. So that's like over 3 hours. Technically, I could have picked up in Tip City, driven some more stuff around, but I had already informed the DTLs that a reset was needed. I was expecting to get there when I had about 6 hours left, especially if I was stopping overnight. Ended up making really good time, no traffic, no weather delays or anything. So at that point I said, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and just shut down. Because if I suddenly contacted them and said, put me back on the list, well, they're not going to get me on the list by that morning. They would get me on the list by that afternoon. And if I did another 10 hours of work, that would completely screw up my reset. So I said, you know what, it's better for me to go ahead and reset now. After all, I did want to reset and have the last 4 days to hit it hard. I assumed I wasn't going to get anything all that great anyway if I was just going to be driving around Ohio or the surrounding areas. Anyway, I reset. Stopping right here where I am. And that was yesterday. So today, technically it's been 8 days since my last video post. And I am sitting here and I've been here bored out of my mind. I understand the rules. I understand the FMCSA requirements for you to have a 70-hour week and then reset when you run out of hours. Or you can just do 8.5 hours a day and work every single day if you want to. I am wired differently, way too energetic. And I am also used to working 14 to 16 hours a day, if not longer. So driving, and I'm also used to a really weird schedule where like Monday, I might come in at like 7 a.m. and by Friday, I might come in at 7 p.m. By the following Monday, I'm coming in at 7 a.m. again. I'm used to, I have a routine down. Whatever time I need to make my sleep schedule happen, I just go home, go to sleep, and then 7 hours before I need to wake up, I will go to sleep. And I lay there in bed and I go to sleep, and then I wake up and I'm off, with the exception of the 2.5 hours. Now I had driven, and I wasn't tired or anything when I got to Goodlettsville. As I started driving north to shut down in Glendale, the last 100 miles or so, I started to feel, I still felt awake, but my brain started to feel like it was getting hazy. And that's when I start to say, okay, that might be, since I'm not tired, I'm just like having a little bit more of a difficult time concentrating. So I went ahead and pulled over, got some caffeine, just moved around a little bit. And I was like, okay, I'm good. So I continued on down the road and I was fine. I got there to Glendale. And as soon as I got there, I did my post-trip inspection and checked out the truck and stuff like that. And as soon as I got there and I was ready to shut down for the day, my body drained. And I was just like, suddenly all the tiredness hit. And I wasn't tired before. Otherwise, I would have stopped early and taken a nap or something like that and just arrived later in Glendale, Kentucky. Met up with my friend, hung out with him, and then the next day, drove on up here to Tip City, did my drop, that kind of thing. Pretty uneventful. Now I'm at this, what is it called? Vandalia, something like that, Ohio. Uneventful. Nothing going on. This truck stops in the middle of nowhere. There's nothing but warehouses and stuff around. Biggest thing I've been thinking about the past few days is today is December 21st. Are they going to be able to pre-assign me to get me back to Atlanta by December 23rd? Who in the world is going to be moving the week of Christmas? Now, granted, I can see people saying we're going to load up, pods will come and pick up the container, and then they'll deliver it and it'll arrive right after Christmas. So while my son is home from college and visiting us, maybe he can help us offload the pod. Let's hope. Because the way I looked at that is, okay, I would be very, very happy to see that happen, where I still have jobs and stuff like that. Because if there is no job, will Schneider actually tell me, sure, go ahead and drive 600-ish miles down to Atlanta for your home time? I don't think so. They're going to wait for me to have a job. So looking at it, I said, all right, well, am I going to get a job? So for the past day and a half, I've been thinking, am I going to have a job? Am I going to have a job? Because I basically got here and I shut down by 7 a.m. I got there at 6 a.m. I broke all the straps, had everything off, and packed away. And then I just creeped along there and then pulled up there and they pulled them off and then I left when it was my turn. But I've been basically here at this truck stop since 7 a.m. It was still dark when I pulled in this parking lot. The sun was just starting to come out over the horizon. Anyway, I'm happy to say that about an hour ago, right before I started recording this, they pre-assigned me. And luckily, it's another BMT, so bring an empty trailer. I don't have to go to Tip City right behind me. I go to Indianapolis, Indiana, and then I go to Louisville, Kentucky, and then I go to Atlanta and drop them off there. I like that, because I don't have to go here at Tip City and wait for them to load me up, and by the time I throw straps and stuff, it's going to be 7 a.m. Then I go to Indianapolis, and by the time I get there and get myself through the traffic in the morning and stuff, it might be, let's say, 9-ish, 9:30, 10 a.m. And then by the time I get down to Louisville, it might be 11 or so a.m. And then I have like 6.5 hours to get to Atlanta. No, instead, I'm bringing an empty trailer over to Indianapolis. So tomorrow morning, I'm going to wake up at 3:30 a.m. I'm going to be on the road before 4. I'll probably get up before that, in all honesty. I'll be on the road before 4 o'clock. That way, hopefully, I can get, maybe by 5:30 or so, I can get to that pod's location. If I'm the first truck in line, which I really hope I am, I'll go ahead and back into the parking lot. Hopefully, they'll get me loaded up, because it's just one 7-footer I got to pick up. Then I go down to Louisville for 2 more. If I'm the first truck in line, I can go ahead and pick up. If I'm not the first truck in line, then I'm going to have to wait on the street until it's my turn. Either way, I'll be in line early. And I don't mind pulling up early and jumping off the clock if I need to until the time, because I know it's a failure of service if you arrive 30 minutes before, over 30 minutes before your appointment time. And I set my appointment time at 6 a.m. over there. So that means I'll arrive there at 6 a.m. and pick up in Indianapolis, and provided that they actually serve semis at 6 a.m., which not all of them do, if they can get me out of there by, let's say, 7, I have a good chance of getting to Louisville, because I'll be leaving Indianapolis, might have a little bit of traffic, but I'll have a fighting chance of getting past that and getting to Louisville by maybe 9:30 at the latest. It's about 120, 130 miles, if memory serves. It's like a 2-hour drive. Maybe it's an hour and a half. I don't remember. I have to look at it again. What is it? This will tell me. It is fine. It always gives me all this. Did you realize there's an update to your assignment? Yeah, it's 130 miles. So that's over 2 hours, a little bit over 2 hours from Indianapolis, Indiana to Louisville. But oh, do I hope I can get out of Indianapolis by 7 a.m. Just one pod. If I can get first in line, and hopefully they'll actually get me loaded up and I can throw the 2 straps and be out of there before 7. If I can, if there's any traffic I run into and I get down there to Louisville by 9, I'll be able to get through there hopefully, and it'll be 9:30 at the very latest. We can only put an ETA in there for a hard hour. So like 9, 10, 11, I can't put it in for 9:30 because it's a sliding line. You have to drag it down and select the hour that you want. There's no minutes. So if I can drop it off, or rather pick up the other 2 pods in Louisville by 9 a.m., I'm not going to be able to get to Atlanta by 3, even if I have the hours left of my driving, which I don't think I would. Because with 105 miles to Indianapolis from where I am right now, and then 130 miles to Louisville, I don't think I can drive, 419.2 miles. Now we're talking, that would be a total of 654.7 miles. And I'm sure I'm going to run into some traffic. If it was smooth sailing and a long haul and driving in the middle of the night, no traffic, then I can make about 650 miles. No stops, except for my load securement checks and the half-hour stop you have to do in order to get back the last 3 hours of your clock, because you can only drive 8 hours before you have to do something for 30 minutes that's not driving. And so once you're done with that, break for 30 minutes or whatever, or loading and unloading, then you get back those hours. Well, I'm hoping that by the time I get to Louisville, usually when you pick up some pods or drop them off, that 30 minutes is where you're going to end up having a potential 30-minute break. And if not, just wait there until your 30 minutes is done, and then you're going to be off and on your merry way. Because at that point, I will have already driven 2-ish hours to get to Indianapolis, and then another 2 to 3 hours to get down to Louisville. Then I'll only have like 5 hours left. 5 or 6 technically, and I technically probably could get too close to Atlanta, but I'm not going to push it. If I can get past Nashville, there are some truck stops going down 24 headed toward Chattanooga. I could stop down there for the night, shut down, shortly after lunchtime, and that way I could wake up early and leave there at like 3 a.m. 2 a.m., whatever time I need to leave there, depending on when it's going to be. And I can get to that pod's location, have all of my straps broken, so that way when I pull up there at 6 a.m. on Saturday the 23rd, they will hopefully pull my pods. I can shut it down at the Schneider OC and go home and be with my family for Christmas. That's my goal. And I think it's a realistic goal, God willing. I don't think there's going to be any delays. Well, I shouldn't say delays. There's going to be people trying to leave the city, leave the cities and stuff, maybe as early as lunchtime or something like that on the Friday before Christmas. That's quite possible. But there's a fighting chance that, I'll have hours to spare. And if I can't get past Nashville, then guess what? I won't. I have slim to no chance of getting, I have no chance of getting to Atlanta. Not with driving on all the back roads and stuff like that. I have no chance of getting to Atlanta tomorrow. And if I manage to, I'm going to hit traffic in Atlanta. So then I would end up being like in trouble trying to find a place to park for the night. There's no drop lots in Atlanta, no Schneider drop lots, because there's an operations center. So my goal would be to drop off, find a nice truck stop there early, jump back on the road, get there by 6, drop off, and shut down on the 23rd early. Then I can go all the way back home, get there before the family wakes up. That will be a Saturday, so there won't be rush hour traffic in the morning, which will be so nice. It'll be the first time I think I've ever gone home on a Saturday and not had to fight rush hour traffic in the drive home. That'll be nice. Big question I have is, if I'm going to be hitting the road again, I've already told them that I'll basically be home, arriving home after my work on the 23rd of December. Christmas Eve is a Sunday, pods are closed. Christmas Day is a Monday, pods are closed. And if I want to start on Tuesday, am I going to be pre-assigned? Probably not. So that means I'll probably receive a job early, well, not early, but sometime in the morning of the 26th. That's a Tuesday. So the big question I have, and the big thing I have to think about, is if I'm not already pre-assigned, I cannot imagine a world where there's going to be a pre-assignment that comes through on December 25th. I can't imagine that. If there's no pre-assignment that comes through on the 25th, if I don't have an assignment on the morning of the 26th, then guess what's going to happen? They're going to send out that pre-assignment probably between about 10:30 and 11:30 a.m. I'm not going to be starting at 6 a.m. So if that's the case, then I will probably go ahead and stay overnight at my house the night of Christmas, and then I'll wake up when I wake up, probably sometime in the 6, 7 a.m. mark, something like that. And then I will head on. I'll head on back to the truck. There's no point in me getting up early, going on out there the day after Christmas, and sitting there in the truck waiting for a pre-assignment if there's not necessarily going to be a pre-assignment that I get just yet. I mean, because what happens if for some reason I don't get a load because pods was down for 2 days? I don't know, man. It's a lot to think about. I haven't worked over a holiday like this before. I did work on Thanksgiving, as you know. I drove down on Thanksgiving morning early and shut down at the Schneider Operations Center in Charlotte, North Carolina. And then the next morning I got up and I delivered. And then after that I had to reset. So I was down for 2 days after getting that done. So we could very easily be in a situation again where I mean, it could be very easily where a situation where a pre-assignment doesn't come through until later in the day. I am going to most likely, the day after Christmas, since that's the day I'm going to be leaving, presume that if I get a job, it's going to be picking up at the Schneider OC in Atlanta, and wherever I'm going to be off to next, I would probably drive until the early to mid-afternoon and then shut down again. So if I got up, let's say I didn't get a pre-assignment until 11:30, by the time I'd say, okay, well, I guess I'll leave and go to the truck. And then I get to the truck, and if I get there by, let's say, noon, no. If I get a pre-assignment by, let's say, 11 a.m. and I get to the truck by 1, I do my pre-trip and stuff like that, I go and pick up the pods at 2, then I hit the road, guess what? That, I think, is going to be better for me to spend that time with my family, because what if I don't get a pre-assignment? I'm going to send a message to the DTLs and say, how is it going to work on Christmas? Is there a chance I'm going to get pre-assigned sometime maybe on Saturday and get a pre-assignment to pick up? You know, because for all I know, they could say, well, it's the end of the day on Monday. You're pre-assigned right now for Tuesday. They may do that, knowing full and well that they have all Sunday, which is technically not a holiday. They could go ahead and pre-assign me, knowing I'm not going to pick up on Christmas. If they do that, sure as the world, I'll be up bright and not yet bright, but very early at the place, picking up early in the morning on Tuesday, the day after Christmas. I'll do that if I'm pre-assigned. If I'm not, I'll be sitting there at the house hanging out, sleeping in my actual bed, a bed that for the past 5 months almost that I've been on the road, I have slept in for less than 3 weeks, because I've cut my home time down to like 2 days. That's the reason why I get home on the 23rd. I will technically have already worked 6-ish hours on the 23rd, so that's a work day. And then I'll be home the 24th, 25th, and then back on the road on the 26th, even though I have I have 4 days. But if I work normally 6 days and then shut down for 1 day, or 5 days and then shut down for 1 day, depending on how hard I'm working and how many hours I have left, that reset sometimes means that by the time I approach the 3-week mark, I end up doing like what I'm doing right now, resetting and then go to work for 2 days. So it's going to be better for me not to be out for 3 weeks. It's going to be better for me to be out closer to 3.5 to 4. So that way I reset and have a few extra days to work that reset. That way it's worth it. Because it's not worth it when you end up saying, like last time, like over Thanksgiving, I had 5 hours left on my clock. I did the drop in Concord, did the drop in Casey, South Carolina, then shut down. And as soon as I reset and had my 70 hours, I was sent over to a place in the Spartanburg, South Carolina area, and then to Atlanta, and it was a total of like 6 hours worth of work, 7 hours worth of work. But by the time I got to Atlanta, it was too late for me to do the drop that day because Pods closes at 3, and I was going to be there closer to 3:30. They would be closed by then. So I had to drop, and then I had to go back early the next morning and do the delivery, and then go back home. Technically, that was home time, if memory serves. Maybe it was the day before home time. I don't remember. Anyway, home time started. I think that was the day of my home time. I had to go back to the truck first in the morning. Then I had to go and drop it off. Either way, I didn't mind because it was easy. The biggest thing that was annoying about that is driving an hour to Schneider, doing the whole pre-trip truck stuff, dropping off, coming back there. That was like 2 hours, then jumping in my car and fighting rush hour time. So it was basically like a 5-hour day by the time you factor in your driving to and from home. That was annoying. What am I going to do? Whatever. We'll see what happens. Next time you see me, it'll be April. You'll watch the next video in April. This is the end of March by the time you're watching this. Good times. Thanks for watching.